You think you've heard every terrifying story? Think again. What if a child could remember a life you'll never survive hearing about? He died once, and they tried to kill him again, but that's only the beginning. In this video, you'll witness secrets so dark they were buried for decades, crimes that even the most powerful tried to hide, and a child who returned to expose everything. He knows things no living person should know. He saw things no child should see. And the truth? It will shock you, scare you, and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Stay until the end, because what he reveals will change the way you see life, death, and the secrets people kill to protect. It was a quiet spring evening in the small town of Millbrook, Ohio, the kind of town where everyone knew each other's business and secrets rarely stayed buried. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and deep purple. Inside a modest two-story house on Willow Street, the Thomas family was going about their usual routine. Emma Thomas, a woman of 32 with kind but tired eyes, was finishing up the last of the dishes while her husband, Daniel, a tall man with an easy smile and a calm demeanor, put away the mail. Their son, a 4-year-old boy named Oliver, was unusually quiet that evening. He sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, his wide blue eyes fixed on the ceiling, and his small hands rested on his knees as if he were preparing to say something important. "Oliver, are you okay?" Emma asked, drying her hands on a towel. She crouched down beside him, brushing a strand of blonde hair from his forehead. Oliver did not respond immediately. He blinked once, slowly, as if trying to remember something that no one else could possibly know. Then, in a voice so steady it made Emma and Daniel freeze, he said, "I remember how I died." Emma and Daniel exchanged a startled glance. 4-year-olds said strange things sometimes, especially if they had been exposed to a scary story or a movie. But something about the way Oliver spoke, the calm certainty in his tone, sent a shiver down their spines. What do you mean, buddy?" Daniel asked cautiously, kneeling down on the carpet next to him. "You're okay. You're here. You're safe." Oliver shook his head slowly. "I'm not talking about now. I mean a long time ago. Before I was born here, I had another life, and I remember exactly how it ended." Emma felt her heart tighten. She had read about children who claimed to have memories of past lives, strange cases that always seemed to defy explanation. But she never imagined her own child would say such things, not in the safety of their home, not in Millbrook. "What happened?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliver's gaze drifted to a corner of the room, as if he were seeing something no one else could see. "I was in a house, a big house, dark, a cold. I was afraid. I tried to run, but I could not. The walls were closing in. Water. It came fast, and I could not breathe. I remember the last sound, a heavy creak, and then nothing." Daniel swallowed hard. He could feel the chill in the air, the kind of chill that comes not from the weather, but from a creeping, inexplicable fear. "Oliver, are you sure you're not just imagining things?" "I'm not imagining it," Oliver said firmly. "I know it. I remember every detail. The smell of the wood, the way the air felt wet, the sound of the clock ticking, everything." For the rest of the evening, Oliver continued to describe his past life in vivid, unsettling detail. He spoke of rooms that no longer existed,
furniture that had long been destroyed, and people who had lived and died decades ago. Names, dates, events, things that could not possibly have come from the world he knew. Emma and Daniel listened in a mix of horror and fascination, occasionally jotting down notes to make sense of it all later. The next morning, Emma drove Oliver to preschool, hoping that a normal day would help him forget his troubling memories. But during snack time, he drew a picture of a house unlike any they had ever seen.
Tall windows with broken shutters, a grand staircase winding up to a second floor, and a small dog sleeping on a tattered rug, every detail precise. When the teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, asked about the drawing, Oliver said plainly, "That's where I used to live. That's where I died." By the end of the week, Emma and Daniel could no longer ignore the evidence. Oliver's descriptions were not just random imaginings. They matched old records of a house on the outskirts of Millbrook that had burned down over 25 years ago. The house had belonged to the Carlyle family, who perished in a tragic flood that had swept through their basement after a broken pipe flooded the lower floors. Names, rooms, even small personal items Oliver described were documented in local archives. Daniel spent hours at the Millbrook Public Library, flipping through microfilms of old newspapers, death certificates, and police reports. Every time he thought he had misremembered a detail, Oliver corrected him with an accuracy that made his skin crawl. By the time they returned home, both parents were exhausted, emotionally drained, and terrified of what their son might remember next. One evening, Oliver asked to go upstairs alone. He climbed to his room quietly, shut the door, and sat cross-legged on the floor. Emma hesitated but followed him, standing just outside the doorway. She heard him speaking softly, almost chanting, describing every step of his death. The way the water rose to his chest, the creaking of the floorboards, the sensation of his lungs filling with water, the blinding fear, and then the final silence. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Daniel, who had been resting on the couch, came up behind her, and together they watched their child, completely absorbed in his memories. The room felt impossibly cold, though it was spring and the heater hummed quietly. Emma reached for Oliver's hand, but he did not respond. Days turned into weeks, and Oliver's memories became more detailed. He described objects in the Carlyle house, like a small music box that played a haunting melody, a green armchair in the corner of the living room, and even the pattern on the rug in the hallway. Emma and Daniel began taking photographs of old houses, hoping to find visual confirmation of his stories. Slowly, an unsettling truth emerged. Oliver was not merely recalling fragments of history. He seemed to be recounting a life that had belonged to someone else, someone who had lived and died in the very town they now called home. Then, one night, Oliver said something that made both parents freeze. "I did not come back just to remember," he said, his voice trembling slightly but full of certainty. "I came to tell you, because no one else could." "What do you mean, honey?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. Oliver's small hands trembled as he pointed toward the window. "You have to go to the house. The old house on Maple Street. You'll find my things there. Everything I left behind. And then you'll know why I'm here." The house on Maple Street had been abandoned for years, a burnt and broken skeleton of what it once was. Daniel hesitated, but Emma insisted. They packed a small bag with flashlights and gloves and set out late one night. When they arrived, the house looked exactly like Oliver had described. The broken shutters, the winding staircase, the small tattered rug in the corner.
It was as if his memories had resurrected the past in vivid reality. Oliver ran ahead, pointing to objects with eerie precision. "The music box is here. The green chair. Look at the rug." Daniel and Emma found each item exactly where Oliver had described, even the smallest details matching his recollection. The air was thick with dust and dampness, but also something else. An almost imperceptible hum, a presence that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. As they explored further, Oliver's voice grew quieter, more distant. "It's almost time," he whispered. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. Before she could ask what he meant, Oliver's small body shimmered slightly, like sunlight on water. Then, in the blink of an eye, he vanished. Emma screamed. Daniel shouted. The old house seemed to swallow the sound, leaving only an echo.
Dust fell from the ceiling, and the floorboards creaked under invisible footsteps. They searched every room, every corner, but there was no trace of their son. Just the music box, still playing its haunting melody, and the rug, worn and tattered, lying exactly where Oliver had said it would be. Standing in the middle of the abandoned house, Daniel and Emma finally understood the terrible truth. Oliver had not simply remembered a past life. He had returned, briefly, to deliver a message, to reveal secrets no one else could know, and then left again, beyond the reach of the living, into a place neither they nor anyone else could follow. Emma's voice trembled as she whispered, "He's gone." Daniel could only nod, tears streaming down his face. The house stood silent, the shadows long and deep, and somewhere, just out of reach, they could feel the small presence of a boy who had lived, died, and returned, leaving behind a mystery that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The days after Oliver's disappearance were a blur of fear, confusion, and sleepless nights for Emma and Daniel Thomas. The local authorities had come, questioned them, taken down their statements, and even searched the abandoned Carlisle house on Maple Street. But they found nothing. No trace of a child, no signs of recent activity, not even footprints in the dust. The music box and the tattered rug were the only remnants of Oliver's existence, frozen in a moment that refused to make sense. Emma found herself waking up in the middle of the night, unable to shake the sensation that Oliver was still near, watching, guiding, waiting. She could hear the faintest hum of the music box playing in her mind, a melody she could not explain, yet one that brought both comfort and terror. Daniel, usually calm and rational, paced the floorboards for hours, muttering to himself about probability, about logic, about something being wrong with their perception. But deep down, he knew. Rationality could not explain the certainty in Oliver's voice, the exactness of his memories, the uncanny presence that lingered even when he was gone. They tried to carry on with their lives. Emma returned to work at the local library. Daniel spent longer hours at the construction site. Yet every corner of their house felt empty, hollow, as if a part of reality itself had been ripped away. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind rattling the windows made them jump, convinced that Oliver was just out of sight, somewhere between the worlds. One morning, Emma found a note slipped under her bedroom door. It was written in a child's hand, perfectly legible, though she knew it was not Oliver's handwriting. She had never seen him write before. The note read, "I'm not gone. I'm still here. Listen to the house. Emma felt her stomach twist. She tried calling Daniel, but he was already on his way to the job site. She read the note over and over, each word feeling heavier, more alive. That evening, she returned to the Carlyle house alone, flashlight in hand, driven by a mix of terror and determination. The house loomed in the dark, windows like empty eyes staring down at her. The front door creaked open with a force that seemed unnatural, as though inviting her inside. The air smelled of damp wood, mold, and something faintly metallic. Blood, perhaps, or simply the memory of it. Emma's flashlight flickered as she stepped into the living room. Dust hung in the air, swirling in the beam of light, and for a moment, she thought she saw shadows moving along the walls, fleeting figures that vanished when she blinked. Then she heard it. The faintest whisper, so soft it could have been imagined. Emma. Her heart jumped. Oliver? She whispered, barely daring to speak the name aloud. Yes, the voice replied, clearer this time. It was small, impossibly small, yet full of life and clarity. You have to come upstairs. Emma moved cautiously, following the voice up the grand staircase that spiraled like a twisted ribbon of wood. Each step creaked beneath her weight, echoing in the empty house. On the second floor, the hallway stretched before her, lined with doors, each one slightly ajar. The voice led her to the last room at the end, a bedroom that had once belonged to the youngest Carlyle child. Inside, the room was preserved as Oliver had described it, a green armchair in the corner, a music box on the windowsill, and a rug worn from years of use. Emma knelt beside the rug, and that's when she saw it. A small, transparent shimmer in the air, the faint outline of a boy. His features just recognizable, glowing softly in the darkness. Oliver, she whispered, reaching out. I'm here, he said. His voice was calm, almost sorrowful. I can't not stay long. I came to tell you something. Something important. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. What is it, sweetie? Tell me. I'll listen. You have to understand, he said. My death, it was not an accident. The flood, the broken pipe, the house collapsing, it was not just random. Someone wanted me gone. Someone wanted the truth hidden. Emma's mind reeled. What truth? Oliver, I do not understand. You will, he said, pointing to a small, hidden compartment under the floorboards, which Emma had never noticed before. Open it. Look inside. Hands trembling, Emma pried the boards open. Inside, she found a small tin box, perfectly preserved. She opened it and gasped. Inside were letters, photographs, and documents detailing a family scandal. Secrets that, if revealed, had led to the Carlyle family's untimely demise. Names of people involved in cover-ups, details of corrupt business deals, and even hints at criminal activity that had never been solved. Oliver's voice trembled slightly, as if reliving the horror of his own past. This is why I'm here, he said. You have to make sure this is known. They tried to bury it, but it cannot be hidden anymore. Emma held the box close, shaking. But you're gone, Oliver. How are you here? I'm between worlds, he said. Not fully alive, not fully dead.
I came back for a reason. And now, it's almost time for me to leave." Before Emma could ask more, the room grew cold. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the music box on the windowsill started playing by itself, its haunting melody filling the room. The shimmer that was Oliver flickered, then began to fade. "Remember me," he whispered, "and remember the truth." Emma screamed and reached for him, but her hands grasped nothing but air. When she looked again, he was gone. The room was empty, silent except for the music box. Emma staggered out of the house, clutching the tin box, her mind racing with a mixture of grief, fear, and determination. She knew that Oliver had returned for a purpose, to reveal what had been hidden for decades, and that purpose was now hers to fulfill. Back home, she and Daniel pored over the contents of the box.
The letters detailed illegal business dealings by prominent members of Millbrook society, secret betrayals, and crimes that had been quietly covered up. The photographs showed people in positions of power, smiling for the camera while hiding the truth behind closed doors. Every piece of evidence confirmed that Oliver had not only remembered a past life, but had returned to ensure justice, or at least exposure, before disappearing again. Weeks passed. Emma and Daniel became obsessed with uncovering every detail, following leads from the documents, confronting authorities, and quietly alerting journalists. They could not shake the feeling that Oliver was still near, guiding them, whispering hints in the quiet moments of the night. Then, one night, Daniel woke to a faint light in the living room. He found the music box playing on its own, a soft glow emanating from the worn rug. Emma joined him, and together they watched as a small figure appeared, translucent, but unmistakably Oliver. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Now you know why I came back." Emma and Daniel held their hands to their hearts, overwhelmed by the impossible, by the presence of their son who existed beyond life and death. "Will you stay?" Emma asked, a voice breaking. Oliver shook his head. "No, I have to go. But I'll always be here, watching until the truth is known. Never forget." And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. The room was silent, the music box quiet. Only the echo of a boy who had lived, died, and returned lingered, a haunting reminder that some truths are too powerful to stay buried, and that sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest weight. Emma and Daniel sat together, holding the box, and their lives forever changed. Millbrook would never be the same, not after the revelations, and not after knowing that one child could traverse the boundaries of life and death to deliver a message too important to ignore. They had been given a glimpse into something impossible, something that defied reason, yet they could not deny the certainty in Oliver's voice, the precision of his memories, or the presence that lingered like a shadow at the edge of their reality. And deep down, they knew that even though Oliver had left again, he had not truly abandoned them. He had returned to change the world, one small truth at a time, and they were now entrusted to carry that responsibility forward. Months passed since Oliver's final disappearance, yet Emma and Daniel Thomas could not shake the feeling that he was still near. Millbrook had returned to its quiet, sleepy rhythm, but for them, the world felt irrevocably altered. The secrets revealed in the Carlisle documents had shaken the town to its core. Local officials had been quietly investigated, a few arrests made, but the sense of justice was incomplete, because they knew deep down, that Oliver had been guiding them, ensuring that the truth could never be fully hidden again. Emma often sat in Oliver's old room, now empty of toys and tiny furniture, clutching the tin box that had first revealed the mystery. At night, she would hear faint whispers, almost indistinguishable from the wind rattling the windows. Sometimes it sounded like a child laughing, and sometimes like a voice murmuring, "I'm still here." She tried to dismiss it as her imagination, but the clarity and certainty of the voice haunted her sleep. Daniel, meanwhile, had become obsessive with timelines and dates. He kept meticulous notes of everything Oliver had described from his past life, every event, every object, every name. The more he compared the details with historical records, the more impossible it became to deny that Oliver had truly lived a life before this one, a life cut short in tragedy, and yet preserved in memory. He often found himself wandering Maple Street late at night, staring at the remains of the Carlyle house, hoping for a glimpse of the boy who had defied death itself. One evening, as Emma prepared dinner, Daniel burst through the front door, pale and wide-eyed. "Emma, you have to see this." He handed her a small envelope, sealed and yellowed with age. Inside were photographs, old Polaroids, apparently taken decades ago, showing the Carlyle house before the flood, but with a figure in the window that neither of them had seen before. It was a boy, standing alone, staring directly at the camera. His features were unmistakably Oliver's. Emma felt her stomach tighten. "But that's impossible," she whispered. "That was decades ago." "I know," Daniel said, a voice shaking. "And yet, it's him. It has to be. Oliver has always been here, in some form, guiding us." That night, they both dreamed the same dream. They were back in the Carlyle house, standing in the second-floor bedroom. Oliver appeared before them, transparent yet vivid, pointing toward the corner of the room. The music box played, slow and haunting. And from behind the green armchair, a small hatch opened, revealing another tin box, identical to the first. Inside were more letters, more photographs, and an old diary belonging to the youngest Carlyle child. A diary that had never been discovered until now. Emma awoke with a start, sweat soaking her pajamas. Daniel was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, holding the first tin box tightly. "It's not over," he said, voice low. "He left more. There's more to find." Over the next several weeks, Emma and Daniel followed the clues from the second box. Each discovery led them deeper into a web of secrets, unsolved crimes, hidden fortunes, family betrayals, and long-forgotten deaths. Each revelation was accompanied by small, inexplicable phenomena. Lights flickered when they were near the documents. Cold gusts of air brushed their faces when they read certain letters. And sometimes, just at the edge of their vision, they would see a small boy standing silently, watching, guiding. One night, while reviewing photographs from the second tin box, Emma noticed something that made her blood run cold. In one picture, taken in the garden of the Carlyle house decades ago, a shadow of a boy appeared standing on the porch, though the boy had died years before the photograph was taken. The shadow's features were unmistakably Oliver's. The same blue eyes, the same blonde hair. Daniel, who had been organizing letters, noticed it too. "Emma, look at the date. This photograph was taken a week after the flood." Emma's hands trembled. How is that possible?" "That's what he's been trying to show us," Daniel whispered. "He's never really left. He exists somewhere in between,
Not fully alive, not fully gone. He's lingering, guiding us to uncover everything. He's not just a memory, he's still here. The next morning, they returned to the remains of the Carlyle house, armed with flashlights and notebooks, determined to uncover any additional clues. The house was silent, empty, yet it felt alive with unseen energy. Dust swirled in the beams of their flashlights, shadows danced along the walls, and the faint sound of the music box seemed to echo from nowhere. Emma reached the second-floor bedroom, where she felt the strongest pull. The green armchair and the tattered rug were exactly as Oliver had described, untouched by time. She knelt beside the rug, brushing away dust, and for a moment, she could swear she saw the faint shimmer of a small boy, just as she had before. "Oliver?" she whispered. A soft, almost imperceptible voice answered. "I'm here. But it's time for you to understand everything." Then, in a rush of cold air, the room changed. The walls seemed to ripple, the ceiling stretched upward impossibly, and the air filled with a sound of rushing water. Emma and Daniel stumbled back as the house seemed to relive the final moments of Oliver's past life. Water surged from the floorboards, the walls groaned, and the sound of creaking wood filled the space. In the midst of it, a small, glowing figure appeared. Oliver, transparent but fully formed, staring at them with eyes full of sorrow and understanding. "You have to listen," he said, a voice urgent. "What happened to me was never meant to be remembered. But now you must. You must carry the truth, because they will try to hide it again. My life, my death, it matters. Everything matters." Emma reached for him, but her hands passed through him as if he were made of smoke. Daniel shouted, "We'll do it! We'll make sure the truth is known." Oliver nodded, his form flickering like a candle flame. "Good. But remember, the world is not ready to understand. You will face disbelief, anger, and fear. They will try to silence you. But do not falter. You are the continuation of what I began." Then, without warning, the water receded, the house returned to its still, dusty state, and Oliver was gone. The only sign he had ever been there was the music box, now silent, and a single handwritten note on the rug. "Never forget." Emma and Daniel carried the tin boxes and the photographs home, their minds reeling with everything they had learned. They began writing, documenting, and preparing to reveal the truth about the Carlyle family, the hidden crimes, and Oliver's impossible journey. But even as they worked, the sense of his presence lingered, a quiet reassurance, a reminder that he was still watching, still guiding, still somewhere in between. Months later, after articles were published and investigations reopened, a reporter visited their home. She asked, "Do you think this child, Oliver, really returned to help you uncover these secrets?" Emma and Daniel exchanged a glance. Neither spoke at first. Then Emma whispered, "We saw him. He was real. Not just a memory. Not just a spirit. He was here to change things, to make the truth impossible to ignore." The reporter looked skeptical, but Emma did not care. She held the tin box tightly, feeling the faint pulse of energy from it, and Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. In that moment, they knew. Oliver had not come back for them. He had come back for the world. And somewhere, just out of sight, a small boy with blue eyes and blonde hair stood watching,
invisible but present, ensuring that justice and truth would never be buried again. His task complete, he faded slowly into the air, leaving only a whisper. I will always be here until everything is remembered. Emma and Daniel looked at each other, hearts full of awe, grief, and an unshakable certainty. They would never forget. And neither would the world, because Oliver Thomas, the boy who had died before he lived again, had proven that even the smallest voice can carry the weight of history, and that some truths are too important to be silenced by time, by death, or by fear. And in the quiet of Millbrook, Ohio, the faint melody of a music box played in the wind, a reminder that the impossible was real, and that some mysteries are eternal.